Welcome to the SAP HANA Academy. My name's Bob, and in this series of videos we'll be looking at SAP Leonardo Internet of Things. In this video series we'll be looking at using the MQTT protocol with Gateway Cloud. And in this video we'll be looking at device sensor onboarding. In the previous video we looked at an introduction into the IoT service cockpit within SAP Cloud Platform, and we looked at building some capabilities and a sensor type. So now that we've done that, we need to deal with device and sensor onboarding. Now the way IoT works here within SCP is that each device exchanges data with a specific protocol. In this example we're going to be using MQTT, and each device corresponds to one unique physical device. So we need to create a device that corresponds to a physical device. So you can imagine that as an IoT device. It could be a laptop, for example, or it could be one of those small Raspberry Pi physical devices. And of course, we're creating these devices specifically for MQTT, the MQTT network in this series of videos, but we're also going to look later on at connecting to REST as well. Then what we'll need to do is what's called onboard the sensor for the specific device. Now, as an alternative, these devices and sensors can also be created via APIs, and we'll look at how to do that in a future video. But for now, we'll create them via this cockpit. So again, what I'll do is that we don't now go to sensor, we go straight to devices. So here I need to build my device. So again, what I'm going to do is click on the plus button, and this time I'm going to call the object gh_soil_device_. Again, I'm going to put the number of my user. And then because this needs to relate to a physical device, we need to choose the gateway that we want to use. Again, we're going to be using MQTT, type of protocol when connecting to our IoT services. So I'll select MQTT. And then what we need to do is select our specific sensor. So to do this, if we scroll down, we can see, if I go right to the bottom, all I need to do is select create. And we'll get this message that we can't change it after creation. And then when I've created the device, you can see here again, this is the device. We've got the alternate ID. We can see the gateway that we're going to be using. Now we need to choose our sensor. So then we map, as you can imagine, the sensor with the sensor type. So just like before, we'll click on the plus. We're building a new sensor. I'll allocate it a name, which will be gh_soil_sensor. Again, I'm going to use that number here. And then this is the one-to-one association with our sensor type that we've already built. So I'll just need to select that. So that is the one-to-one relationship between the sensor and, in this example, the sensor type. We can see that the sensor type contains these two capabilities. So you can kind of understand the hierarchy. You've got a capability, which you can have many capabilities within a sensor type. You have a sensor type within a sensor, and then a device must contain at least one sensor. So then I'll click on create, I'll click on confirm, and we can see now that we've actually matched our device. Here we can see that we've linked it to a sensor. The sensor links to our sensor type, and of course the sensor type contains those two capabilities like so. So this is the single device that we've built now called gh_soil_device_40, and we're using the MQTT gateway. So now what we need to do is deal with security. Now that we've built this device, how are we going to enable our physical device, whether it's that Raspberry Pi or whether it's a client such as Payho or Postman, how are we going to enable those things to access our IoT service or our device that we've created here? Well, we'll do this with a certificate. So how do we access that certificate? Well, we click on the device, and you'll see that when we select a device, if I go back to the top screen in devices, and again minimize, you'll see that if we select the device, you have 4 tabs. The sensor that it's using, data visualization, which we're going to look at later on. As you can imagine, if I look at the measure, for example, one of the measures, or both of them, at the moment we've got no data because we've not loaded anything to our device yet. We'll look at that more in depth later on. The third tab is certificate. So this is how we'll deal with security. So what we need to do is click on generate certificate, and there'll be a couple of different certificate types that you can generate, a PEM file or a P12 certificate type. Because we're going to be using a specific type of client called PayHo for MQTT, we're going to be using this P12 certificate. So I'll click on generate. It'll take a few seconds for that certificate to be generated. You can see it here. So just to show you where it is, if I go to my downloads folder, here we have that certificate specifically for this device. And again, it's a P12 certificate. But this is only the certificate. Alongside all types of certificates, you need a password. So that's why a pop-up box came up, and as it says, please copy and save the secret because this cannot be restored. So that's the certificate's like a public key. You can see this as the private key or the password. So you need to save this. If you forget this, you won't be able to access that certificate. So what I'm going to do is, if I launch Notepad on this machine, if I do a search for Notepad, we're going to copy that to this server, just to a text file on this machine like so. So that is my certificate. I'll just make that a bit bigger. There we go. So this will be used in a conjunction with that certificate based on the client or device that we're going to be using. So now that we've got that, I can click on OK, and we know the certificate's in the downloads folder, so we can close this. So now that we've generated the certificate, as you can imagine, the certificate will be used with either your device or your respective client. In this example, we're going to be using PayHo to connect and load some data manually into our IoT service. Again, in the next video, we'll be looking at loading that data, setting up PayHo, and lastly, visualizing the data just to see that all the security and the client and the loading of data works. And again, we'll cover all of this in the next video.